Is Nuno Espirito Santo the right man to lead West Ham United to Premier League safety this season? Um, there's no denying that when he took the role on at the end of September, we were in a precarious position with just one win in 6 games, and we were sitting second from bottom in the league. However, in the 19 games he's been in charge, or 20 if you include the FA Cup win over QPR, under Nuno, we've lost something like 18 points from winning positions. It started with a draw away against Bournemouth, where we had a 2-0 commanding lead, sound familiar, and managed to squander that because of Nuno's strange decision to sub Callum Wilson, who was on a hat-trick, within 5 minutes of the second half starting. Now, taking Wilson off no longer provided that attacking outlet, and it invited pressure on us, which Bournemouth took advantage of. And in a way, we were even lucky to get away with a point in that game. Much the same happened in both home and away games against Brighton. And you can also include the defeat against Aston Villa at home in between, where again, in all those games, we had the lead, we sat back, and we ended up losing or drawing the games. The last time we gave up a lead was in the home game against Nottingham Forest. But since that time, since that particular game, we've gone on to win 3 games on the trot, with a cup game included, and it looked as if we had turned a corner at last. Not only have we started winning again, but in the 2 league games against Sunderland and Spurs, we dominated the first half of each game. Nuno seemed to have found some kind of solution at last. Go at the opposition from the off, apply a lot of pressure, create lots of chances, and take advantage of those chances. Simple game football, isn't it? If we just score more goals than the opposition, then surely that's all we need to win a game. But not so. Alas, we cannot sustain the sort of pressure that we do apply against these teams, or we have applied against these teams for a whole game. We seem to be good enough to do it for a half, but not for 90 minutes. But alas, we cannot stop the opposition from scoring, no matter how many goals we score and no matter how many defenders we have on the pitch. We simply can't keep a clean sheet. On Saturday, the early evening kickoff against Chelsea was much the same. I would imagine that every single West Ham fan that went to Stamford Bridge, and those watching on TV as well, were expecting very little from the game. But by half-time, we were purring. We had smiles on our faces. We were not only 2-0 ahead, but we dominated Chelsea, and they were lucky that they weren't even further behind at half-time. You know, we could have scored 3 or 4 goals in the first half. Now, look, we knew Chelsea would come at us in the second half. Let's be brutally honest here. The 3 subs that Rosinia made all proved to exploit our weaknesses. They did it to perfection. In the second half, everything focused down their left-hand side, our right-hand side of defence, because Chelsea know that most of the goals that we've conceded this season have come from that side of the pitch. Now, this isn't an attack on Aaron Wan-Bissaka. He offers us an awful lot on that side. But if we look at the way we played throughout this season, we have 2 main defensive weaknesses: the right-hand side of our defence and Max Kilman. And this is another thing. I'm not blaming the defeat on Chelsea on Max Kilman either. He was complicit, but he wasn't the only one that was. We've got 1 day left in the transfer window. And if we do not get ourselves a central defender, I will absolutely be gobsmacked. Now, at last time of check-in, I think Forest were winning. Let me just see what that result. Right, it was 1-1, probably the best result we can hope for. So Forest hasn't moved. They've only moved 1 point further away from us, which in a way we can still catch up on. Look, what Nuno's tried to do on several occasions this season, including the game against Chelsea, simply doesn't work. We do not have the type of defenders in the squad who can defend a lead. Whenever Nuno takes an attacking player off or a midfield player off and replaces them with a defender, usually Kilman, many fans just fear the worst, and that's exactly what happened against Chelsea. At half-time on Saturday, we were confident that even if Chelsea came at us in the way that we were playing in the first half, there was enough about us to continue our fight against them. And even at the end, Nuno did state that we should have just kept the same momentum as we had in the first half. But in order to do that, Nuno needs to stop making the changes that he makes. He needs to stop taking off an attacking midfielder or a striker and bringing on a defender, because even if we had 5 or 6 centre backs on the pitch, we still concede goals. There is another way, and the other way could have been done at Chelsea as well. Before inviting teams to camp just outside our 18-yard box, why not go for another midfielder instead, in order to stop the opposition from reaching that position? We've got two very capable defensive midfielders in the likes of Freddie Potts and Sangutu Magasa, who could have come on instead of Kilman. By all means, bring Pablo off, to try and stem that flow. But at the same time, shore up the midfield instead of trying to shore up the defense. Every time we put on more defenders on the pitch, it doesn't work. There's almost a confusion, that it takes a while for the defenders to acclimatize. And before you know it, we're conceding goals. Instead of taking off a player like Pablo and bringing on a defender like Kilman, I'd be more comfortable with a defensive midfielder coming on in place of Pablo. Because that way, we can stop the opposition from having so much space, from stopping them from creating so many chances, and stopping them from crossing the ball into the box. Time and time again, we've seen an attacking player sacrificed for a defender, and time again this season, we've paid the price. So another way must be looking at filling up the midfield. If we'd have done that against Chelsea, there's no way that they would have had as much command of the midfield, and there's no way they would have had as much space as they had in order to create the chances that they would have. They would have still come at us, there's no doubt about that, but it would have been far more difficult to get through our midfield. The idea is you've got to get through the midfield before you get to the defence. What we do is we make it easy. We get through the midfield, they get through the midfield, and then our defence is just not good enough to stop any goals going in. Ironically, at the start of the second half of the game, and before they scored their first goal, we still had something about us. And that was because someone like Pablo on the pitch was just causing mayhem for their defence and their midfield. We still had an outlet. Pablo may not be the most stylish player who's ever going to wear the West Ham shirt, but boy, no one could fault his efforts. He ran his socks off, tried to win every 50-50, put his foot in, and was an absolute nuisance. The minute he was brought off for Kilman, we lost that momentum, and we saw an onslaught of Chelsea attack after Chelsea attack. Now we've got Todibo on a 3-match ban. Might even be more if it's reviewed. Nuno no longer has the luxury to bring on a defender for an attacking player because Kilman is going to be part of the starting lineup alongside Dinos. We don't have any other central defenders. And that's it as far as we have. We've got 3 central defenders. That's it. And we've got to go in the market. I know there's talk about Nathan from a Spanish club. There's talk about Harwood Bellis. There's talk about Disasi. Maybe it's back on. There's a number of defenders that we're looking at going for. But I don't just want anyone. It's got to be someone that's going to be good enough to come in and compete for a first team place. There's no point getting someone that's a backup, because our backup, which is Kilman, who's now our front, are no longer a backup, is just not good enough. So it's got to be someone who's better than Kilman. As for me, I would pack out the midfield. That's got to be the answer for me. Let's cut out giving the opposition space. Let's cut out dropping too deep. And a defensive midfielder would be a better answer for me. But if I was any good at coaching, I guess I wouldn't be doing podcasts. I'd be managing a team. As for moving forward, we are running out of games, but we have seen that we can put in some excellent performances. So there are many things to thank Nuno for. We've changed the formation to a 4-4-2, 4-4-1-1. It's just given Bowen and Somerville a lot more freedom. Somerville now 4 goals in the last 4 games plus 1 assist. And had that goal against Forest not been taken away for offside, that would have been 5 in 5. So he's bang in form. And we've got to thank Nuno for that, I guess. We've changed tactics as we are now pressing from the front, and that's again down to Nuno for bringing in the likes of Pablo and Castellanos. They're both grafters. I can't see Pablo scoring that many goals, but Castellanos is getting more and more chances each game, and I think he'll grab a few goals, which may or may not prove to be vital before the season ends. And the whole team looks as if it's more vibrant, more energized. It looks as if the team has got more fight in it. It looks as if the team feels that they can do something in a game. And that's got a lot to do with Nuno and bringing in also Paco Gemes, who was brought to the club. And I would dare say, it's far too coincidental that we've gotten starting to get better at the same time that Lucas Paqueta has also left the club. Look, there's a lot to be positive about, but right now we don't feel that because yet again we've conceded goals, and it means we've lost 3 points in a position that we were in a winning position. Nuno has got to stop getting over his obsession with bringing on defenders too soon and look to keep us in games in other ways. If he does that, there's still hope. But I've got to be honest, we are running out of games.